We're going to get started here. Hello and welcome to the Rails Brewery Service Center. I am Laura Turner, Vice President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order on Thursday, July 26th at 1 p.m. Emily, can you call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr.
Here.
Dave Barry. Sue Busenbark.
Here.
Michael Campbell.
Here.
Gwen Gregory.
Here.
Liza Hickey.
Here.
Jay Caston.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Daisy Porter Reynolds.
Here.
Dee Reynolds.
Here.
Nadia Shake.
Here.
Michelle Simmons.
Here.
Chris Stagg. And Laura Turner.
Here.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to recognition of guests and announcements. We will start in Burr Ridge. Do we have any guests here in Burr Ridge?
Wesley Smith, Rails.
Dan Bostrom, Rails.
Joe Philippak, Rails.
Mary Witt Rails.
Ginger Brennan, Rails.
Trey Plas Rails.
Emily Feister Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
Ann Slaughter, Rails.
Veronda Fitchford Rails.
Steve Spiller, Rails.
Welcome and thank you. Next, we'll move on to public comments.
See if there are guests in there.
Oh, yes, sorry about that. All right, let's see if there's guests online. All right, do we have anyone in Bolingbrook?
Dark.
Any guests in Coal Valley? Any guests in East Peoria?
Kendall Larson, Rails, and I am off to watch this on the live stream. There's no one else in the room.
Any guests in Rockford? Anyone in the Vernon Area Library? Illinois State Library?
Yes, good afternoon, Deborah Aggert.
And Gwen Harrison.
Okay. And lastly, Galesburg Public Library. Okay, moving on. I think we're at public comments. Do we have any public comments in any of our locations? Hearing none, we will move on to adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and second for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Number 6, oath of office and election of officers. Will the newly elected board members please stand and recite the oath of office?
Start, Paul.
Go ahead and get somebody, go ahead.
Take it away.
I do
solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Illinois, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office of member of the Board of Directors of the Reaching Across Illinois Library System according to the best of my ability.
Okay, thank you. Welcome. And we look forward to meeting with you. Okay, next we're going to move on to election of officers. The slate of officers recommended by the nominating committee was included in your agenda packet. The floor is now open to any nominations. Do we have any nominations for officers? Okay, hearing no nominations, may I have a motion for the approval of the slate of officers presented?
I move that we approve the slate.
Okay,
I'll second.
thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, we will move on to approval of Rails Board minutes, financial reports, and expenditures. May I have a motion for the approval of minutes of the June 15th, 2018 Rails Board meeting?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Next, we have the Rails financial report from Jim Krieger.
Good afternoon. You have in your agenda the financial report for the month of June and also the expenditure report, which will be a separate resolution after this. The unassigned, these financials are our preliminary financials for the governmental type funds. We'll have a few more expenditures that come in that pertain to fiscal year 2018, but certainly the bulk of them are there and most of the adjustments have been made. The final financial report will be issued will be included in the September board meeting as part of the annual financial report, and you'll get a presentation from our auditor, Sikich, on them, and they will be full and complete financial statements of Rails. First of all, our cash balance in the general fund was $11.9 million. That would fund an estimated 12.3 months of operation, so we have a year's supply of cash on hand at the end of the fiscal year. We haven't received any more area per capita grant revenues, not for several months now, but through the first 3 weeks now of July. Through June 30th, we received about 36% of our fiscal year 18 grant. The remainder is almost $6.3 million that will be received in fiscal year 19. Should we have a 60-day window of receiving per capita grant revenues after the close of the fiscal year, so that would be August 29th. And if we were to receive a couple million or something on August 28th, for example, we would add these to the fiscal year 18 revenue. Otherwise, it will just be a very large receivable and classified as deferred revenue. So that could very well vary in our financial statements when we get them, depending on the receipt of funds. So as we're discussing in the revenue, we have received $3,550,000 of our fiscal year 18 revenues, and we also received during fiscal year 18 nearly $4 million of prior year revenues, which we recognized in our fund. But we were still $2,274,000 below our budget for the year. Investment income was very good, $181,000, $116,000 over budget as the interest rates increased dramatically over the year. It wasn't too long ago that we were investing funds at 0.03%. Now it's at around 2%, with some more projected increases to follow. On the expenditure side, we did very well. Our general fund expenditures were over $800,000 below budget. Better than $500,000 of this was in the personnel line. We had a number of, we had a position or two that weren't filled. We did have some staff reductions, particularly in the LSAP support area, and so it was a delayed filling of positions and either not filling positions for this year. Our benefits were also very favorable. Health and IMRF and unemployment, we had rate reductions in all of those. Well, the health stayed the same, but IMRF, we had a nice rate reduction, and we'll have another very significant rate reduction in fiscal year 19. Just to mention, we had a number of terminations during June. The most significant is that the Prairie Cat staff became independent, and they are off Rails payroll, and that is a shift from them being on our payroll and and Prairie Cat in the future partially reimbursing us for these costs to where they're not on our payroll, and we are beginning this year giving Prairie Cat quarterly checks as support. Moving on, most of our other expenditure categories were under budget, but a few were over. E-resources, we were $58,000 as we over budget as we invested $80,000 more above budget in our e-read program. Part of this was because we had some savings elsewhere and we needed additional content that we purchased into this program this year. Vehicle expenditures were $55,000, were $39,000 above budget as our repair and maintenance costs rather soared. We are in the process of replacing a major part of our fleet, but the new vehicles haven't arrived. And so we're hoping that this next year that will get a little bit more stable. Contractual services were below budget as we did not make any grants for new LSAT memberships. And as I mentioned this morning, that's a big number for the fiscal year 19 budget. The delivery department expenditures were 34% of our total general fund expenditures, but they were $50,000 below budget as they had favorable personnel and contractual costs. Actually, this is one of the adjustments. The contractual services we say were 37 below budget, but we found another 17,000 bill that got missed, and the contractor didn't even notice it. It went back to May, but we found that, and so that variance will be around 20,000, but still below our budget. And LSAP expenditures of support, they were 152,000 below budget, still a little bit over 20% of our expenditures, and most of that was in personnel, mostly people that were associated with Magic, which dissolved, and so we reduced our expenditures on that, but we still gave them plenty of support to get their dissolution done. And capital expenditures were under budget. Unfortunately, much of that, 130,000 of that, was not getting our vehicles delivered yet. We only had 3 or 4 vehicles, I believe, delivered. There's several on order now. And then also a major portion of our Burr Ridge renovation was actually charged to fiscal year 17. So all in all, our general fund expenditures, despite our spending being almost $1 million under budget, the expenditures exceeded the revenues by $1,124,000, which would be the decline in the fund balance unless we get some more money in before August 29th. Can I answer any questions?
Has the state supplied us with any date we may be getting any
No, it's
money from them?
we're trying. The state library is trying a system where they break the payments requests down to lower numbers, but more of them. The comptrollers they've noticed some difficulty when you request a large amount. Because the state's 8 months or so behind on paying bills, 8 to 10 months. And so the thought is that if they submit smaller vouchers, they may trickle to us a little faster. But we haven't seen that yet, but we have our fingers crossed.
Trickle is all relative. I don't know, I mean, we ask them every month. I guess we can, if you don't mind, Deb and Gwen, I think we'll just ask you right now. Have you heard anything else about
I did talk to Greg just a while ago, Dee, and that is still in the works to try to get it to the quarterly, to get it a little more timely to you when the funds are released. Sometimes there's just not enough to go ahead and do the system area per capita grants at that time.
So no update on when we might get money? Okay.
Stay tuned.
I will be sure to let you know. It's in the report every month once we receive anything.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jim. May I have a motion for the approval of the financial report for June 2018?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Jim, are you going to talk about the expenditures now?
Sure. There is a listing, at the end of the financial report, there is a listing with summary totals by vendor, if there's more than one check on the right side, of our payments that we made during the month of June. And these totaled, find my number here, $802,885.95. Also for you new board members, at the end of that report, there's also the detail of our credit card expenditure, so you see what that is instead of just a lump sum number. And that is included in the $802,000. So are there any questions on any of the details?
Hearing no questions, may I have a motion for the approval of the check voucher register for the June 2018 in the amount of $802,885.95.
So moved.
Second.
Emily, will you please call roll?
Sure. Christine Barr. Sue Busenbark.
Yes.
Michael Campbell. Gwen Gregory. Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Daisy Porter Reynolds.
Yes.
Dee Runnels.
Yes.
Nadia Shake.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
Laura Turner.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, so we will move on to reports. Report from Rails president. Okay, since I've been president for 17, well, probably not even a full 17 minutes, I have nothing to report at this time. Other than thank you for that. Do we have, we'll go to committee reports. Consortia committee, Paul.
Yes, ma'am. The Consortium Committee did meet on Monday, July 23rd. And just as a prefatory note, just like the Rails Board packet, the Consortia Committee packet is available on the Rails website if you'd like to view all the source documents. We discussed the Consortial Staff In-Service Day, which Ann Slaughter coordinates, which is coming up, well, in a couple months. We did, as a committee, review the resource sharing definition and vision that came out of the resource sharing committee, and I'll assume that probably discussed in more detail under that committee report. Discussed the recent consortial migrations and consolidations that we've discussed, the Magic and Link joining SWAN to make a very large consortium of 97 libraries. CCS this spring went live on Polaris, leaving Circe Dynex. Ann Slaughter, who's right there, gave us a report on the Rails consortial support grants. And would you want to say just a few words about the process?
Sure.
Or, to put you on the spot, but
We have,
You want to come up here, Ann?
okay, yeah.
Or just stand there, I'll tell you. Just stand there.
there's a mic. There's a mic right here.
All right, that's good.
Not really.
It's hard to know where to begin in a group that includes many new board members because there is a lot of backstory with our support to the LSAPs, otherwise known as Local Library System Automation Programs. But I think I will just kind of sum up what we have happening right at this very moment. In fiscal year 20, we are offering a grant program to offer support to all of the consortia in Rails. We currently support the 3 LSAPs, Prairie Cat, RSA, and SWAN. We have contracts with them through the end of this current fiscal year. So we've opened up a grant process to those groups, as well as the consortia who are independent, which we discussed in the orientation. So those grant applications are due on August 1st. So Rails staff is going to review those and make some preliminary decisions about what the budget for supporting LSAPs might look like in fiscal 20. That includes financial support, as Jim also explained, regarding kind of the Prairie Cat shift, as well as in-kind support, things like for RSA, they are staffed by Rails. Some of these, some consortial staff are in our facilities. We provide data center services. There's a whole variety of in-kind services. So all of that will be determined via this grant process that's kicking off as of the application deadline on August 1st. For fiscal 19, we are offering the currently independent consortia a core services only support level, which offers them some basic support services like use of our meeting rooms, opportunities to connect and collaborate with each other. The primary benefit is that their prospective new members would be eligible to apply for catalog membership grants, which is another grant program we have that we're bringing back this fiscal year. It was on a break in fiscal 18, but in the previous 3 fiscal years, we awarded about $3 million to, I'm going to get the number wrong, but over 30 libraries, as well as 2 consortia in kind of lump sum grants for migrations of groups of libraries into our LSAPs. So the first application deadline for that is August 15th. That's also the deadline for the fiscal 19 LSAP core services support. So it's going to be pretty busy starting in August, and you guys will certainly hear more about it as we make decisions, and particularly as it comes to the fiscal 20 budgeting. Any questions?
I would just add, it might be useful to know that many, if not most of our consortia, their budget cycles start earlier than Rails, which is why we're already talking about fiscal 20.
Yeah, that's a really good point. They all start a lot earlier than us. The first budget deadline that we're aware of among our consortia is at the end of October. So they want to know a lot earlier than it's often possible for us to know what our money is going to look like. So we're balancing that.
Thank you, Ann, and sorry to put you on the spot like
no
that.
Worries. Thanks, Paul.
One other thing I'd add that just might be of interest to everyone, SWAN, which is one of the consortia LSAPs in Rails, is having their SWAN Day on Friday, August 17th, and they have graciously opened that to any library who might be interested in attending. Although some content is SWAN focused, there is a tremendous amount of great content that I think is of interest to all libraries. The fee is relatively reasonable. I think for a non-SWAN library, it's $40 per person, and that includes lunch. And if you go to the SWAN support page, which is linked off the Rails website, you can see their program detail, and they've really got an excellent day planned. I would go if I didn't have another commitment. So, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on to the executive committee, which is not met. And the policy committee has not met either, so there are no reports due to those committees. And then for resource sharing committee, Jane, will you give an update, please?
Yeah, actually, the resource sharing has not met either since the June board meeting. Their next meeting is September 10th.
We'll move on to Rails reports. Dee?
Yes, thank you. So you have my monthly report, and I will just preface it, especially for the new board members, by saying that generally I don't reiterate much that's in the report, but I can certainly change that if you want me to. Generally, I answer questions or just mention some highlights or anything that might have happened since the last meeting or since I wrote my report. just so you know. I would first of all like to take the opportunity to welcome the new officers. So our new president, Laura, our new vice president, Paul, our new treasurer, Nadia, and our ongoing wonderful secretary, Susan. We had a good orientation, a great orientation, if I do say so myself, session this morning. Thanks to all of our new board members and others who are coming, Michael Campbell, Liza, Daisy, Jay, and Tom, everybody else who did as well. And again, particular thanks to the officers for being willing to serve. So we give you sort of a general report, and then I give you a more specific report, and this year about what I've been up to, and then this month we've also given you an update on some of our special projects. What we're planning over the course of the year is to report on some of our, hopefully even all of our sort of ongoing departmental programmatic initiatives related to, for example, human resources, related to CE, related to communications, so that you'll get a sense that way at every meeting of what it is that Rails does on a regular basis for members. So in terms of the special projects that report, we are continuing to work on the strategic plan. That got kind of sidetracked a little bit this summer. And I'm hoping to get back to it very soon. We spend a lot of time gathering member input. We've been working on rebranding, which includes chiefly, I guess, a new logo, because our current logo references strongly Talking Book and Rail Services, which we no longer provide. Also,
Excuse me, Dee, this is Debbie at the State Library. We're having difficulty hearing you. Are you away from the mic a little bit?
no, I'm actually wearing a mic, so I don't know if
We'll just turn up our volume.
Sorry about that.
I'm getting some paper shuffling too.
That's not me, because if you can't hear me, you can't hear me either. But thanks for bringing that up, though, Dee, I appreciate it, because it's a tricky thing. But on the other hand, there's one right here we could just move. Let me know if this is better then. Sorry, everybody.
Feedback.
I don't know the answer to that. I'll try to talk louder.
That is better, thank you.
Good, okay. So we have been working on rebranding, and at the end of the meeting, we're going to show you a couple of visuals of what the new logo is going to be. As I said, we're continuing, as you have heard, I know we're continuing to work on the membership standards. We did, at the last meeting in June, the board voted to release the current draft for data collection, and we're going to be working with the State Library on doing that over the course of the next year to really get a very accurate picture of where libraries are in terms of meeting the standards. Find More Illinois, Jane's going to talk about that in a little while. Delivery, we have been engaged for several months now in working with the Laboratory for Applied Spatial Analysis down at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville. They specialize in logistics and spatial analysis types of things, and they've been they've just about completed a study that will help us, we believe, to make our delivery more efficient. It has some advice, suggestions on routing and the placement of our hubs. So you'll be hearing more about that. And we have a meeting in August with the State Library and with Heartland about this, the suggestions in this study as well. Delivery is a big part of our budget, and so The more we can optimize the, how we do it, the better off we all are. The unserved is a big issue in Illinois. Came up a lot in our strategic planning. As almost 1 million residents don't have access to public library service, and we've been talking with the state library and with Heartland about ways that we might work on that. Explore More Illinois is an online pass program for cultural attractions, museums, state parks, zoos, that kind of thing it's an online program. The Rails is going to be funding this and making it available for all of our member libraries. And then we're involved with a number of national partnership programs as well that you can read about in the report. I don't think I have anything else to say. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Jane, perhaps you're going to touch on this. For the Find More Illinois, I was just curious, with the interloan library requests, there were 476, but 331 were filled. Is it because they're not filled because they were inaccurately identified, or they're checked out and can't be?
Since they're requesting from existing records, the accuracy is better than filling out handwritten requests. So in most cases, it's because they were just not available to be filled, and part of that is a reflection of, that is a pilot project, and so there's only a few libraries in the pool, so to speak.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? So I hope that you'll let me know if there, going forward, if there is other information you would like included in our monthly reports. We do our best to give you a good picture of the things we're working on a daily basis. You also have in this month's report the quarterly consortium report, which we do include the consortium report from the consortium committee meeting. That's it.
Okay. Thank you, Dee. Now it is time to hear from the Illinois State Library.
Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon to everyone. My name is Deborah Aggert, and I'm the Associate Director of the Library Development Group and Literacy here at the Illinois State Library. I bring you greetings from Secretary of State Jesse White and Deputy Director Greg McCormick. We're very pleased with the current fiscal budget, and our focus right now is the monies for the coming year. We have a full year of funding plus additional funding for some specific projects. The library community fared well this year. We anticipate the state formula grants, school and public library per capita levels to be granted at the fiscal year 18 levels, which were at the full amount. We have your system area per capita grant for the coming year. It has been reviewed, and you'll be hearing from us shortly. You'll be hearing much more from us regarding more grant awards and opportunity for discretionary applications. We were pleased to be working with ILA this year to help fund a trustee speaker at the ILA conference and possibly purchasing trustee materials. We're working on these details. And as a side note, the ARSL, the ARSL, Association of Small Rural Libraries Conference, is going to be held here in Springfield for September 12th through the 15th. This is the largest registration they've ever had. It's 758 librarians nationwide, including all 50 states, Alaska and Hawaii, will be hosted here in Springfield with an opening evening reception September 12th for 450 here at the State Library. Are there any questions I can answer?
I did have a question. but I don't remember what it was. I'll have to ask you later.
I'll be here for the whole meeting, Dee.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to new business, committees and appointments. This is discussion only. Dee?
Yes, so you have the list of committees in your packet. And I guess just in general, so the executive committee consists of the officers and then a board member elected by the board. The policy committee is chaired by the vice president and is made up of whoever is like really psyched about policy. Then we do have board members who serve on other committees that you've been hearing about. For example, the resource sharing committee, we have 2 board members who represent the board on that committee, also the Consortium committee. And then we do also have the Open Meeting Act's OMA officer. We have the FOIA officer, who is currently Nadia, and the ethics officer, who is currently Dee Runnels. So I'm assuming that Dee and Nadia are willing to continue, but if somebody is interested in being the OMA officer, that would be very good. So you can let us know now, or you can let Laura and or me know of your interest in that particular position when you feel like it. And you can see that there are spots open on the policy committee as well. The nominating committee is appointed by the president of the board in the spring, and that is made up of non-current board members. So it's really not that relevant to this group. Does that make sense? Some of you have had the pleasure of serving on the nominating committee. Yes.
Can you just explain the inactive committees a little bit?
Yes. Well, they've kind of, in some cases, they've kind of morphed into different committees or working groups. For example, the Consortium committee working groups, right? Some of the work, there was
the overlay.
The overlay search group. Well, they found the overlay, and so they were then declared inactive. Right? That's pretty much there was an RFP group. The System Membership Standards Committee was charged with developing the standards. They did that. Now we're sort of, in the implementation phase, and so we'll need another group at some point that would have a different charge. The delivery committee sort of been, last year we talked with the board about that becoming more a part of the resource sharing committee portfolio, because it is part of resource sharing, and having delivery discussed separate from resource sharing or vice versa wasn't the best way of keeping all the context together. That answer? Okay.
Could you say a little more about the work done by the committees as a new person?
Sure.
Just a few sentences.
So, I'll talk about, for example, the executive committee. The executive committee has met very rarely over the lifetime of Rails. It's been only when something needed to be decided really quickly, and it was impossible to get a full board meeting together, or when specific responsibility was delegated. For example, when we have vacancies between elections, the executive committee meets and interviews people who apply to be board members because it makes sense. It's fewer people. We probably should have given you the charges of all the committees. They all have charges. We'll send them out to you. I don't know if Paul and Jane, you want to speak to, Paul can certainly speak to the Consortium committee, and I think Jane could speak to resource sharing.
I'm pulling both of those up right now.
Okay, great.
give you the summary. So for the Consortia Committee, which we just revised back in November with board approval, there's a number of bullet points, but the overarching one, the committee will investigate and recommend ways to improve and increase consortial services in Illinois, particularly among member libraries and rails, to provide the best library services to Illinois residents and optimize the tax dollars. And another important aspect of that committee is just information sharing among the consortia, not just at the staff level, but among the members of the boards of the consortia as well. So it's been very useful in that respect. And the resource sharing committee is relatively new because we realized we did not have a committee that looked at all of the aspects of resource sharing. Delivery is important, consortia are important, but they're not the only aspects of resource sharing. So, in fact, a lot of the conversation at the first two meetings of the resource sharing committee has been about the broader aspects and looking at it, you know, in the big picture, including collaboration, staff, and that type of thing. So I can pull up its chart. And it's quite similar to the Consortium Committee, but its charge is to investigate and recommend ways to improve and increase resource sharing in Illinois, particularly among member libraries and rails, to provide the best library services to Illinois residents and optimize the use of tax dollars.
Thank you.
The policy committee perhaps obviously makes recommendations when policy changes, additions are needed. They meet and make a recommendation, which is then presented to the board.
Okay.
So, a question, if there was the need for a committee that's on this list, how do
You mean
make...
that's not on the list, or that's
Yes.
on the... Oh.
Like, what if somebody felt like, we need a committee about this? How do we go about forming a committee or deciding what committees we should have?
Good question. The resource sharing committee, Jane kind of just described, we realized that we didn't have all the people at the table who needed to talk about resource sharing, so that was a staff suggestion. And the board approved it. We wrote a charge, but certainly if the board feels that there should be a committee, that would be a board discussion item.
Just for like our new members and even existing ones, because I didn't even know that if you felt like there was an issue you wanted the board to discuss in a committee format, you could present the idea of a different type of committee.
Is it appropriate in this board to also have ad hoc committees?
So, again, if you are interested in being part of these committees, please let us know. And we'll, try to get them populated for next month.
Any other questions on committees or discussion?
Just one more from me.
No, that's fine.
What are the responsibilities of the OMA officer?
To make sure that we follow the Open Meeting Act rules.
That our last question?
If there's an open position on the committee and a name in parentheses next to it, on this sheet, does that mean that that's the person that...
I think it's the person who was
Used to be on it.
Right.
Okay.
Because, for example, under policy committee, Judy Crocker is no longer on the board, so her position on the policy committee is open.
And there are no vacancies on consortia or resource sharing, is that correct?
Yes, I guess, because, I mean, that doesn't mean you can't come to it, or,
Sure.
you know, we try to avoid having a quorum of the board at a, you know, on a committee, and we also are aiming for some continuity in these committees, and so the committee terms tend to be 2 years, because we've had a lot of difficulties over the past few years particularly with the consortia committee, because it was often the president of the consortia who was on the consortia committee. Well, they changed regularly. So it was really, and so with the resource sharing committee, we have 2-year terms. And I don't remember about the consortia committee. I'd have to look that up.
It's annually, but we do encourage
continuity, so.
Well, would there
Sorry,
be-
Daisy.
Well, I'm wondering, to her comment, like, if there was a lot of interest for people to be on the resource sharing committee, could that committee be broken into more specific like resource sharing but focusing on this one area, resource sharing but focusing on this other area?
Right. It's always has been the intention to have subcommittees or subgroups, so absolutely. We just haven't done that yet, because the committee just started meeting in January?
February.
We've only had 2 meetings.
It does have one working group, which is the Find More Illinois working group, which will have a limited lifespan, so to speak, because
more of an ad hoc or working group.
Yeah,
right.
They're charged with providing guidance during the pilot period.
But there's quite an extensive charge for that committee, so that is a perfect example of how more board members could become involved.
Yeah.
So we'll work on that over the next month to give all board members more information about what the possibilities are for more board engagement in committee work.
Or I don't know if you're looking for this today, but I would throw my name in the hat for policy committee. I'm willing to serve there.
Awesome.
Is it Emily's complete? Thank you, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm willing to do the OMA.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Was that Michael on policy?
No, OMA.
Oh, Oma, thank you.
I will also do policies, since that's what we got. Sounds great.
We try to meet we only meet when it's necessary, and we try to meet right before the board meeting, so it doesn't, or the morning of, so that it doesn't take up too much of your time.
Sounds good.
Okay, next we have Find More Illinois, the proposed fee structure, and Jane was going to discuss that.
So we talked a little bit about Find More Illinois this morning at the orientation, and certainly continuing board members have heard quite a bit about it over the years, as we have been investigating this and working on it for about 5 years, really. We've done a bunch of research, which accumulated in a software search and then a pilot project, which we began implementation of the pilot in February, and it went live for staff use in mid-April. So it's been going on for a couple of months now. We have 21 libraries from 3 different consortia participating in the pilot project, and it is enabling interlibrary loan, both staff-initiated and direct patron requesting for patrons of those libraries. So it's been going well. The pilot has, confirmed that the software works as it was advertised, so to speak. It's given us good feedback on ways to streamline implementation, some specific needs of various types of libraries. We do have variety of libraries represented, from University of Illinois at Chicago, obviously a large academic library, has different needs than a small public or school. So we've learned a lot more about those needs. So it's going very well. One of the things we're hearing more and more, however, is that there's not enough libraries in it. So we are ready to launch expansion. But before we do that, and we hope to do that this fall, we do need to agree on a fee structure. There's two basic types of fees. There's one-time implementation fees. Those are relatively easy. We're planning just to do pass-through of vendor fees. And there's two components to the implementation fees. There's one for each integrated library system. And then there's one for per library. So for example, for consortial members, there would be one fee to cover the integrated library system for the entire consortia, and then a per library fee. To make that easier, Rails is planning to pay the integrated library system fee for consortia, because it would be very difficult to parse that out if only some libraries in a consortium decided to join. So those are fairly straightforward. We're also intending to provide some limited number of opportunities for assistance for the integrated library system implementation fee for standalone libraries as well. And that has already been approved in our fiscal 19 budget.
So does that include that Rails will pay for the ILSP for non-LSAP?
Yes.
Okay.
We already have 3 consortia implemented as part of the pilot project. And with Nick merging into Prairie Cat next year, that leaves actually only 4 more consortia. So it's a fairly small number, so it's very doable. So any questions on the implementation fees?
Jane, I did have a question. Looking at the proposed fee structure, it says that annual collection expenditures include expenditures for print, electronic, and other materials. So for this purposes, collection expenditures definition will be a bit different than what we have in the Rails system standards.
Yes, and I will go into that, but are there any questions on the one-time implementation? Okay, so then the other component, there is an annual cost to this, and of course the more libraries we bring in, our costs go up as well. But in order to make this as affordable as possible to all sizes and types of libraries, we are not recommending doing a straight pass-through of vendor fees for that. So after doing quite a bit of number crunching with sample data from about 400 libraries, using various factors, what looks most promising is to do a scaled fee structure based on total collection expenditures, ranging for the very smallest libraries for $150 a year, for the largest libraries, those with a collection expenditures of $1 million or over, of $10,000. We did find it important in eRead, which also has a component based on collection expenditures, that we do cap that. That was an issue for our larger academic libraries in particular. We like this. It seems simple, straightforward, easy to understand. What Paul was asking about was in our standards, that we will be doing data collection on in order to help libraries meet the percentage requirement for collection expenditures. We were also going to count in expenditures on sort of access to shared collections, which would include fees spent on LSAP or consortium membership. Fees spent on Find More Illinois would count as well. But for this purpose, in order so that it doesn't become circular, it would be just what a library spent on its collections. And for public libraries, it would be what they report on their IFLAR report. So this month we're just wanted to present this and ask for any feedback or discussion. We will be asking for approval of it next month. Our expansion timeline is laid out to open up membership, a sign-up period beginning right after Labor Day. We'll have 3 cohorts or opportunities to sign up between Labor Day and the end of the year, because once libraries sign up, we need to do a lot of data collection. There needs to be software implementation. There needs to be training, so it sets off a whole chain of events. Not to say that there's only going to be 3 opportunities. This is the initial kickoff, and then we'll go from there because we want to keep expanding this project. So, questions, comments? Scott?
Excuse me. I previously had a concern, and Deirdre laid this to rest for me a few weeks ago. We had a conversation. My understanding is if a patron at any library that's participating attempts to request an item through Illinois, if that item is available in their home catalog, their local catalog, then it'll say, no, get it from home, don't get it from over here. That's perfect.
That's right. The software will redirect the patron to the catalog. It will ask, do you want to search for it in your catalog? And link it either back to just the generic catalog, or in some cases, depending on how that catalog is set up, we're able to repeat the search in the catalog. And we've found in the pilot project so far about 10 or 11% of attempted requests have been redirected in that way. So it's a very valuable feature.
So my next question is, does a library have to be a member of a multi-library, not necessarily multi-type, but multi-library consortium of some kind in order to access this, or kind of standalone library?
We are very interested in including standalones at this point. We limited the pilot to consortia just to get the most bang for our buck, and that we only had to connect 3 catalogs. But with the expansion, we're very interested in getting standalone libraries.
Is there any worry that small standalones might be de-incentivized to ever join the consortium if they can get access to all the stuff they don't have for $150 a year through this?
Possible. On the other hand, there are clearly greater benefits to being in a consortia if you can afford it.
Yes.
Some libraries just can't afford it.
Sure.
Some libraries don't choose to do it for their own reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly it can be portrayed that way, but it cannot be portrayed that way as well.
Yes. And we are continuing to support consortial membership and growth through our grant program for that.
I mean, if you go way back, just to be really, I guess, clear on why we're doing this, is that the state library was very interested in there being one consortium in Heartland and one consortium in Rails. So Heartland merged all of their consortia 2013, 14. Rails, that doesn't seem too likely a possibility. They don't have, not all the libraries in Heartland are in the SHARE consortium, but quite a few are. So this is our alternative to one consortium. It's an umbrella. And this particular software has a lot of other benefits in terms of, potentially there are other components or modules that we could purchase and implement related to a library being able to automate using this. It could be an alternative to OCLC membership for bibliographic records. I mean, this software has come a long ways.
Right, it does, we already, there is the capability, we haven't worked with any of our libraries at this point on doing it, although I have tested it. You can download records from cataloging purposes. We've set up a connection to Library of Congress. So one of our goals with this project was also to provide an alternative to OCLC for libraries that want one.
That's great.
Because we know that's certainly been an issue.
We spend a lot of money on OCLC in Illinois, $5 million a year.
I talked with Prairie Cats Delegates Assembly yesterday, and Carolyn Coulter, Prairie Cats director, made the comment, if they had this, even just for the interlibrary loan component, they would be able to use Sky River, which is an alternate source of cataloging records, versus OCLC at great savings, which would in turn help libraries pay for this project.
And other local services.
You're right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jane, you mentioned, and you and Scott were talking about, if somebody places a hold for a book that is in fact at their home library, that they would be kicked back to their home library. What if that book is checked out? Is that the same situation? You have to wait for your local copy.
Actually, no, it does. It does. I ran into this yesterday during my demo, actually. If everything's checked out, it will let you place.
It will let you.
And
Thank you.
library alarm cost.
Just to clarify, I don't think that works for iShare, because the iShare databases are all separate, so it won't throw you back to iShare.
Let's look at that, because that may be just something we need to tweak in the setup.
That's why we're doing a pilot.
Yeah. iShare is a little bit different. The way these catalogs are all hooked together is using a protocol called Z39.50, which enables bibliographic and other information to be exchanged between different services. The Prairie Cat and Rock River Library Consortium, they have one Z39 set up for their entire consortium. iShare is a little bit different, and they have a separate one for each library, so their 3 participants all show up as separate catalogs. But let's look at that one. It's good to know.
So coming back to the hold to queue thing, one of my greatest concerns of anything like this is, replicating the trucks passing each other on the highway full of bestsellers, when going back and forth like we've seen.
You mean like they're already doing?
Exactly.
Really more so.
So, if it doesn't matter if it's my actual library, here I am, I'm a patron, I'm at my library, and they bought 10 copies of whatever, the newest John Grisham book, and they're all 10 already being checked out, and I can't get those, I can use Find More to request that from another library. Are we having truckfuls of bestsellers passing each other on the highway again?
It's a good question. I think it's also a sort of a philosophical debate, because that's one possibility. Another possibility is that it's the only copy in some consortium, and the patron requests it, and it's out or missing for years, and if the person goes into a black hole and never gets it.
Sure.
So there's just so many different nuances, but I think, and maybe Jane has a definitive answer. Maybe it's something you can turn off or on. I don't know.
It gets complex. I will say that you do not have to say that everything in your library is available for interlibrary loan. Like,
of course,
what part of the setup process is identifying which locations in your library are available for interlibrary loan, So if you say have things in a new book collection or in an archival collection that you don't want any interlibrary loan requests made on, that could be excluded.
But I mean, I don't know if you know this, but as far as you know, is there a setting where it says if it's owned by your local catalog, you can't request it, or versus is it available in your local catalog right now? You can request it. Is that a setting that's?
I'll look into that more, but based on what I saw yesterday, I think it's more availability if it's in a collection that's available for interlibrary loan.
Okay.
So, it's also important because the software search committee struggled with this as we reviewed different software systems, to keep in mind this is an interlibrary loan system and not an ILS system. So there's a lot of overlap, but it's not the same in terms of setup. So the request can be patron initiated, but if it runs into an issue, staff at the library at some point need to say, yes, we're going to fill this, or no, we're not going to fill this.
Question?
Yeah.
How many libraries or systems do you think you're going to implement this next year? What's your guesstimate on that?
I don't know if we have a good guesstimate. I know I have about a dozen libraries that either have inquired of it already or that have been suggested to me. I will be doing some outreach to those. I think, like, as we've seen with other projects, especially eRead Illinois, we'll get some early adopters, and those early adopters and people will see other libraries joining, and it will sort of build.
And on the implementation of it, what do you have to have additional headcount to do implementation, or is it pretty?
The vendor actually does a lot of the implementation. This is all hosted software. At the beginning of the year, we did hire Eric Bain, who was previously a Magic support person, hired him on, and he's been doing a bang-up job in working with the libraries and working with the vendor on getting setup done. So, and Ann and I are both very much involved in the project as well.
Didn't we have an estimate, though, like a hoped-for number, 50 or 100 libraries?
You and I had talked about 50
50 or
and 100, so I think 50 would be a good start, but I think we'll just have to see. We will have some limits, practical limits, because there is hands-on training involved, so just, coordinating that and making sure that we have enough laptops or people can bring laptops, that type of thing. So there will be some limits in terms of how fast we can add libraries. But that would be a good problem to have. Other comments or questions?
I would just add a comment that this proposal offers very clear pricing for this type of resource sharing, unlike the pricing that we see in the state from OCLC.
Amen.
It's quite different. Thank you, Jane.
Okay, thank you. We will be bringing this back to you next month for approval.
So if you don't mind, Madam President, I would just like to say another word about the committees, if you don't mind. So obviously, it is the board's will, whatever committees we have. All the committees are approved by and charged by the board. Up until, in recent years, there hasn't been that much interest in lots of committee work. It's completely up to you guys if you want to change that. So just want to be sure that was clear.
Thank you.
Yep.
For clarifying. And thank you, Jane, for the update, excuse me, on Find More Illinois. Okay, we will go to 9.3, Sun Life stock transfer. Steve, were you going to explain?
Yes, thank you. So there's a memo in your packet. In May, I was contacted by Roger Rittman, name possibly some of you know. He does a lot of library work in Illinois. about a potential stock transfer from Pamela Feather, who was the director of the DuPage library system, a predecessor system of Rails. She was interested in transferring the stock to Rails. We contacted our attorney about it, and they ultimately recommended against doing this for a couple of important reasons. One, this is a Canadian company, and this is not, that is sort of not, we have a very conservative investment fiscal policy, and that is not something that we thought lined up, or that they recommended that lined up. The attorney, I mean. Also, it is somewhat unclear as to whether the stock belongs to Pam or to DuPage. And so we just decided, discretion being the better part of valor, and it being only $9,000 probably at the most, it just really wasn't a good decision for Rails to make. So in the packet you have some documents. We need a resolution, and then we need some things signed so that we can officially decline this stock. Happy to answer any questions about why we're declining it, but that's what I understand.
Do we have a policy on gifts?
Do we have a policy on gifts? We have a fiscal accountability policy. I think we have an investment policy. That's a good question because we don't get gifts.
We have an ethics policy.
We have an ethics policy. Yeah, I don't think we have a gift policy.
Something for the policy
Yes,
committee.
indeed. Yes, thank
Maybe
you,
the
Jay.
policy
Yeah.
committee.
Yes.
I think we're allowed to accept them in the fiscal policy, but I
Right.
don't recall. We did receive U.S. Treasury bonds and some cash from an inheritance at one time, and that's the only thing we have gotten in since our inception.
I'm just curious, I suspect the answer to this question is, because attorneys like this kind of thing, but passing a resolution to decline a gift seems very, like it's a long way around. I mean, like, can we just say no?
What you said.
Because there's lawyers involved.
I don't understand. This Mr. Ritzman, this is D. Runnels from Davenport. He's Rails attorney?
No, he is not Rails attorney. No.
Who does he represent?
Feathers. He is representing Pamela Feather, who is the person
And then who does Ansel Glink represent?
They are Rails attorney.
Okay. And is Pamela Feathers still alive?
Yes. She is she's a retired former system director, and Roger Ritzman was the attorney, I believe, for DuPage.
Yes.
When it was in existence, and he is also, I'm gathering, assisting her with her estate planning.
And she doesn't know whether she owns the stock individually or whether it's really DuPage Systems stock?
That is apparently the case.
And so then why is it that we can't be the same as Oswego and accept the stock and just sell it? I mean,
because we are advised not to by our attorneys.
Why? We're not going to be holding the stock.
Because because, for example, what our attorney said to us was that we could, if Pam has survivors who, in the case of her estate, if they could come after Rails in the future, I guess to put it kind of crassly, to get it back. It just doesn't seem to be the kind of position for the relatively very small amount of money that we want to put our system in. It's just not necessary.
I don't know what Pam's estate plan is, but those kinds of claims are not the norm. I mean, people give away, make gifts during their lifetime, and it's gone. I mean, it's not even subject to the estate then.
I think maybe
That
what's
would be my
confusing
thought,
this
but
year-
then I don't understand how we would be violating this investment act.
I think maybe what's confusing the issue is, according to the assignment of rights document, the registered holder of the stock right now is DuPage Library System. I'm sure that's probably the red flag that's
Yeah.
scaring our attorneys.
It's murky.
But again, if she's wanting to give it to Rails and we're saying, you know, we don't necessarily want this, this is essentially saying almost we're accepting it and then immediately assigning it to Oswego Library. Like, how can we assign something that we've not accepted? I know this is an attorney thing, but
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm not an attorney.
I
I'm just
understand.
following the.
And neither am I.
Do
But-
we need more clarification?
We could certainly get more clarification and have the attorney present at the next board meeting to explain it. I don't think there's any hurry on this.
sure. It just seems weird. How could this board have the authority to
Almost
assign?
like this assignment should be like a quick click.
ownership?
We
Pardon me?
assign whatever interest we might have, which could be nothing. But I guess I just don't see how it is that Oswego can take the stock and sell it, but we shouldn't.
Just a different approach to
Different attorney.
a different attorney, different, speaking, personally, the way, well, and professionally, with the kinds of issues that can get a government entity or government or boards of government or employees of government entities on the front page of newspapers or on the television for bad reasons. I could just see somebody taking this the wrong way. I don't know. So I think that's where I think some of this is coming from as well.
In Roger's letter,
Well,
it says,
I would be happier if we did table this until the August meeting.
What did you say, Scott?
I was just going to say, now looking more deeply into Roger's email that was dated Monday, May 14th, he says the bottom line, it may be most expedient to simply re-register or change the owner's name from DuPage Library System to Rails. Thus it is ours, and then we can give it away to us. Maybe he's just trying to help there because DuPage doesn't exist any longer. So transfer ownership to us, and then we can legally give it away. But why are we involved at that point? How is it helping us?
Because we're the successor system, right? I mean, because DuPage doesn't exist anymore, so DuPage can't do anything. So therefore, Rails has to do it on their behalf.
Got it.
And is the background for this successor system business? Do we have the paper trail that shows that all of DuPage's assets were transferred into Rails?
Yes, that's what went on during the merger. All of the compliance, all of the yes.
Technically, we already own this.
Except that we're not really sure who owns it. I mean, this is why it's been going on for months, even at this point. Yes, Jay.
Well, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
You'll have to excuse my learning curve for being a new board member. Do we have a fiduciary responsibility on this board?
Yes.
If we do. Well, part of that means taking the advice of our council.
Yes.
And if they recommend not to absorb this, we would not be doing our right to go against their opinion.
Well, that was certainly my opinion about it all. Yes. There's no question that it's a little murky because of the transition of the organizations. It's made murkier because, Pamela, because it's, whether it's hers or whether it's the DuPage's, and the fact that she can't definitively say that. So just to be, safe as opposed to sorry, our attorney said, probably better not. If it was $100,000, that'd be different. But we probably already spent $9,000, as I said to our attorney, trying to not have it.
Yeah,
It's ridiculous.
The amazing thing is, and I know we all know this already, but if you retire tomorrow, Dee, I doubt that there's any finances that are murky, whether they're yours or Rails. like.
That is,
What
let
kind
me
of
let me
lending of
assure you
resources?
that is the case. Yes. Thank you, Scott.
How crazy is that?
May the minutes show.
Well, I think at this point we have two choices, either table it until next meeting or decide to go ahead and take a vote.
I would say somebody needs to make a motion to some effect and then see what happens.
Well, this is Dee Runnels. I'll
Don't know
move we
how many
table it
jump
to the
ones.
next meeting.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I need a second.
Would someone like to second that motion?
I'll second.
We have a second. This issue will be tabled until.
No, you have to vote.
Oh,
You
we
have
have to take a vote.
Probably needs, well,
Roll
I guess it
call or
doesn't.
yea,
No.
nay?
I don't know, what do you think? A roll call or just,
Voice vote.
Let's
Voice
do
vote.
roll-
Yeah, we're
let's
not
do roll
doing
call.
money.
yeah,
We're not doing.
I think an aye.
we're not doing any money, we'll do a
So
roll
we
call.
can just take a vote.
Let's do
No,
a
I
roll-
mean, we won't do a roll call, I apologize.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to table this issue until next month, say aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, no.
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 That was,
I
I
think
mean,
a roll-
that's too hard to figure out how many ayes and noes we have.
I think a roll call would be.
We need a roll.
Yeah, that's
call.
why I thought you
Right.
might need one.
Emily, can you do a roll call,
Can I
please?
Sure.
Yes,
Will it cost Rails to have the lawyer come
yes,
Yes.
next month
Yes.
to speak? So,
not a lot, but it
not a
will
lot.
certainly
So,
cost.
I mean, we have to consider that, but
Yep.
if we table it, we're charging ourselves some
Yep.
cash.
That is true.
Why don't you do the roll call, Emily?
Okay.
We'll see where we're at.
Christine Barr. No. Sue Busenberg.
Yes.
Michael Campbell.
No.
Glenn Gregory.
No.
Liza Hickey.
No.
Jay Caston.
No.
Paul Mills.
No.
Scott Poynton.
No.
J.C. Porter Reynolds.
No.
Dee Reynolds.
Yes.
Nadia Shake.
No.
Michelle Simmons.
No.
Thomas Stagg. Laura Turner.
No.
The noes have it.
Okay.
Okay, so then.
We're not the
So
Now you have to do something.
So now we
I'm
need
going
another
to go
motion.
back and ask again, do we have a motion for approval of the resolution to decline ownership of the stock and authorize execution of assignment of rights?
So
moved.
I need a name.
I heard Paul first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Call it, Laura.
We'll say Michelle. Did you?
I would be happy to, but I believe.
It was
It was me.
Daisy? Okay. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow, I got to do some official presentation.
Nice job. Very well done at that.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to unfinished business. Board engagement strategies. This is discussion only, and Dee will talk to us about this.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, we talked a lot about this at the last meeting, so I just wanted to follow up a little bit and clarify, just, kind of say definitively what I heard, and then you can tell me if I'm wrong. So we told you that that the bylaws there is a bylaw that says that more than 2 unenforced absences means that the board can decide that a board member has failed to meet his or her obligations and that they would then be removed from the board. I mean, that's in the bylaws. I think we just have to enforce it. I don't think there's any further to say about that. And an excused absence just means you let us know.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, okay, I mean, that would, okay, so I think we're good with that. So I think as far as attending meetings, I think everybody understands that, sometimes you can't attend in person, sometimes you can't get to a Polycom location, but everybody will do the best they can. And attending by phone is fine, and people are going to fulfill their responsibilities to the best of their ability, no matter what. Is that fair enough?
Yes.
Okay. There was some discussion of a Saturday meeting. I think there were some people who really liked the idea, and there were some people who really didn't like the idea. So I'm going to say for now that we just skip that. Okay. And then there was discussion of a buddy system. We talked about that a little bit more this morning at the orientation. And there seems to be some interest in that. So I'm going to ask here if any new board member or even an ongoing board member who would like a buddy, and any ongoing board member who would like to be a buddy. Obviously, you're both buddies. But if I could just get some, show of interest in this or a discussion about this.
Why don't we do raise your hand if you want a buddy, raise your hand if you need it.
So presidential.
If you are a new board member and would like a buddy, raise your hand.
Lindsay would be a buddy.
Awesome.
Just for us to get an idea.
Okay.
If you're an existing board member and willing to be a buddy, raise your hand.
All right, awesome.
So we have Paul and
I can't see everyone's hands, so that's not helpful.
But it's just that I think it was just to get a general idea.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll email everyone.
Yes, and I'm sure that Dave and Dee would be willing to. I mean, Dave's not here, but I'm sure he'd be willing to.
It was really just for us to see.
Right. Okay, so we'll get some information out to you and try that.
May I suggest that buddies be assigned geographically where possible? Hi, Paul.
Sure.
It's harder,
Right. Which means probably, I guess I will have some buddies, because now we do have some downstate people, so.
So,
Excuse me, and
yes.
Laura, this is Debbie from the State Library. Is document 10.1 on your website for us to see?
There's no document.
There is no document, okay. Same with 11.1, the ALA report? There's no
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Sorry. Okay, so we're going to try the buddy system. Okay, and I think we'll just move on. Obviously this is just the beginning of our engagement, recruitment, etc. We'll be talking more about this, but I think that's enough for today.
Yeah. Well, and I will just say one of my coworkers is a member of SLA Illinois, which is a Special Library Association, and they're doing the same thing in SLA. She's in charge of coming up with a new member buddy mentor thing too. So I think it's something that happens.
Yeah.
Common.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Did you have more, Dee?
Nope.
Okay, we are moving on to 10.2, Rails Board Meeting Schedule for 2019. And this is an action. We need suggestions for locations for the remaining open dates.
And there's a document in your packet that shows what we have tentatively scheduled at this point.
So I have a comment. I noticed that the October meeting, when the OCLC America's Regional Council is meeting in Chicago, I don't know if that's an issue for anyone.
Is it an issue for you?
Well, it might be.
I don't think it's an issue.
It's a big conference, a big international conference that's happening in Chicago.
I do not think it affects any other board member or Rails in general.
Okay. Just remember to do your excused absence. That was a joke, I hope you know. Do we have any others? I can't find it right off hand. Aha, thank you. Do we have any other suggestions? It looks like we have, what do we have open? May 24th and June 28th.
We will be going to East Peoria next month.
Yep.
I'm happy to host, if.
Oh, of course.
Anyone of
We've done that in the past as well, yes.
Could I suggest perhaps for the June date, if they're willing to host us, Cherry Valley, so that we could have a meeting in that part of our system?
Sure.
Yeah.
So that would mean that we're in Aurora in May, and Cherry Valley in June. Is that what I'm hearing?
Subject to availability.
Yes.
Yeah, subject to
Yes.
availability.
Were those the last two dates that we had to pick?
And Cherry Valley is near Rockford.
Right.
Yes.
And if you want to travel more than this, for example, we could find out if Vernon was available on another date. It just wasn't available on that date. Where these are the dates that would normally be our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully they all work for you. I'm sorry, Gwen, that one doesn't.
September 28th, and I see that it's Pug Day, which I recently learned is not about dogs at all. This is very small compared to that, but it's also my library's in-service day. I wonder if that is a day that we should consider moving, and I'm happy to just miss the meeting if not, but just throwing that out there.
And I'm not sure what Pug Day is. What?
Prairie Cat Users Group. It's just an internal. But it means that the staff from Coal Valley aren't available.
Right.
I guess.
Oh, you're the rail staff. I see.
It's very hard to move these meetings.
No problem.
Yeah, but we can if you all want if you all want us to try, we certainly will.
Just throwing it out there. No big deal
Yep.
to me.
And I will say, when we moved this meeting, had at the last minute Dean not told me that I would have been here tomorrow. Because I'm so programmed now for Fridays
Yeah.
that it does become hard once you kind of get in that groove that Rails is Fridays.
Just a proximity note, the June 28th meeting, ALA is the 20th through the 25th, just prior to that. But just as you're thinking about your schedule in June.
Personally, I've missed the last two June Rails Board meetings because I think it got pushed earlier than normal because of ALA, which then ran it into a conflict. I have to work every year, the Friday of Father's Day weekend.
Right.
On this schedule, it's pushed after ALA, so I'm thrilled about that.
Right.
But that just helps me, so I don't know if that now screws up a lot of other people.
So we need this to be approved because we posted.
I would make a motion to approve this as presented with those
With the addition
possible
of
alternate locations.
A second.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. We will move on to 10.3, Executive Director Goals. Dee will present, and I actually have to leave a bit early, so I believe, Paul, that means you will take over my responsibilities for the last part of the meeting, and I will see you all next month.
All right, thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
Bye, Laura.
Good vacation.
Thank you.
So, so you have my goals in your packet. This comes from the board evaluation of me and goals that I set for myself. In the past, the board has approved them, and then I've worked on them and reported back to you on progress throughout the year. So I welcome discussion, additional goals, fewer goals, that never happens, etc.
Just a note, for new board members, Dee's evaluation is done and completed, ideally, with the board that completes the year with Dee. So these goals come out of that evaluation process, both suggestions that Dee makes in her self-evaluation, and also goals that come up from the board members who evaluated her during that year.
What is the LASA study?
That is the laboratory for applied spatial analysis, the study they're doing about delivery.
Got it.
And their recommendations, which could be far-reaching, and we'll be talking to you about that in much greater detail when it's all finalized.
Cool.
Any comments, questions, changes?
If not, may I have a motion to approve the executive director goals as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Do we give that second? We'll give that second to Nadia. If that's okay. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Goals are yours, ma'am.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So every month we try to do some board development in terms of just talking amongst ourselves or bringing someone in occasionally to talk about some professional library issues. So this month we thought that those of us who went to ALA, and this can obviously include board members as well, anybody who wants to talk about anything they did or learned at ALA. Who would like to start?
I'll start.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
So it was good at ALA. I did quite a bit of ebook stuff, although probably not as much as Veranda did. I was able to attend the ebook summit, which Dee had in her report, and participated in a couple of the working groups on that. One other non-ebook takeaway from that summit I'd like to mention is one of the needs that emerged was for more professional development in the areas of data analysis and visualization. So I know Joe and I have already discussed that as a possible CE topic in the future. And that emerged out of a discussion of metrics of ebooks and getting a better handle on that. I am also on the NISO FASN working group. NISO is the National Information Standards Organization, which sounds like a big federal agency, but in fact is a fairly small membership organization that really fosters collaboration on various information standards. FASN is a fairly convoluted acronym, stands for Flexible API Standard for e-Content NISO. And our working group has been talking for well over a year now, trying to get better technical protocols to help communication of ebook data among vendors, jobbers and publishers and libraries, and to smooth that out because in some sense it's kind of the Wild West with different vendors making their information available in different ways, which means you have to handle multiple ways of setting things up in your catalog. So that group's work is far from finished, but I was part of a presentation to present our work as we've accomplished it so far. And my contribution was to discuss some of the issues that we have run into in working with our various ebook platforms and with our consortia. So that was pleased at how that went. I would say other highlights of the meeting for me was being able to hear Michelle Obama and also Doris Kearns Goodwin, the historian. Her forthcoming book is called Leadership in Turbulent Times, and she drew on the biographies she's written of Lyndon Johnson, FDR, Teddy Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, and kind of did compare and contrast as to how they developed their leadership. So I'm looking forward to that book.
Thank you, Jane. I would draw your attention to our written report about the National eBook Summit, because I think this is important for every library. All libraries, we're trying to, there's been an evolving situation with libraries' access or libraries' ability to purchase ebooks. Just recently, it suffered a setback where Tor, which is a division of Macmillan, decided that they were going to, as they call it, embargo sales of new ebooks to libraries for several months, because they feel that we have a chilling effect on libraries on their sales in general, which is, of course, completely not true, has been shown to be completely false time and time again. But so the summit, and Veranda was the main person leading this with some of our colleagues in Massachusetts and California. We brought together about 80 people, Veranda? Mm-hmm. From publishing, academic consortia.
Distributors. I said ebook distributors.
Ebook distributors, to talk about how we can come up with an agreed upon way of dealing with access to ebooks, access in the broadest sense. So I think it got rave reviews. It was just a first step. We're going to be doing more. And like I say, the written report, I think, is the best way for you to learn about that, and you'll be hearing more about that as well. The other thing I would say about ALA, I guess, I also enjoyed hearing Mrs. Obama. It's always amazing when you go to New Orleans, because ALA librarians, we were the first national conference to go back to New Orleans after Katrina. It was only 10 months afterwards. And anybody who was there remembers how people came up to us on the street and thanked us for coming. And people who hadn't worked as tour guides or restaurants or anything for 10 months were back working or back in business, because librarians were there, and they still thank us. The mayor thanked us at the opening general session. I mean, it is really something. It's really a great thing. So that city is doing better, but I think it's still struggling. So it's always very touching. Who else has things to say? Anybody?
Talk
Yes.
about my highlight.
Yes.
If you don't mind, I'm not going to stand up. I think the microphone will pick me up. So I went to a full-day pre-conference called Avram Camp. It was focused on challenges faced by women in library technology. It started with a workshop on imposter syndrome, which was training in identifying and overcoming imposter syndrome, which is a whole issue, broader than this, but specifically with women in technology. And then we spent some time in breakout sessions that were suggested and chosen by attendees on promoting equity, diversity, and inclusion, communicating across silos, and advocating for your accomplishments. It was based on a model established by an event called Ada Camp that was an unconference put on by an initiative called the Ada Initiative that existed to support women in technology. They closed their doors a few years ago, but they published a set of training materials and a toolkit for delivering events like this that's licensed by the Creative Commons, so you could access it and use it. It was really well organized. It was co-presented by people from LITA, the Library Information Technology Association, and the Public Library Association. They gave us pre-conference reading, a couple articles, and some questions to reflect on, which sort of helped us start the day. The organizers established kind of an open and safe environment for sharing our experiences and our opinions. So the outcomes were, obviously what we learned and discussed throughout the day, but also new connections with peers in the industry. I think kind of that focus on women in technology was particularly important. So that was my highlight. And then, you couldn't possibly top Michelle Obama being interviewed by Carly in the Library of Congress. So that was, the conference was essentially over that day.
Viola Davis was not shabby.
She made us all cheer.
Any other reports to share?
Apparently not. We, as promised earlier, we would like to give you a look at the logo that we think Wes is going to bring that up on the screen, I think. Big change. Need a drum roll.
Takes a second. Yeah, this is very anticlimactic.
It looks like all of us.
This is not the logo you want.
Oh.
So that's a track, obviously. It's also an infinity loop kind of a thing, referencing the fact that our work is continuous, we're linked, it never ends, it's et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
I love the font. I love it.
yeah.
Would it be black and white, or would it go back?
No, well, we also have a color version, but that's very good. That's not a very good, it's really, it doesn't look that color. It's much golder. Well, yeah, thanks. See, that's why I was afraid about the color, but it's, you know what, we'll email it to you all, but it's more gold and dark blue. It's actually very attractive.
While we're kind of on
Yeah.
this topic, can I just ask, I know that the talking books portion went over to the state library. How is that going?
Well, we can ask the state library that. I think it's going well.
Okay.
State library with Talking Book and Braille is going well. We have hired, Talking Book program has hired readers advisors. They're housed on the 5th floor in our Old Technology Training Center. They're doing well. This materials is going well. It's all doing well here at the state library, so thanks for asking.
Thank you.
You know, it's interesting, Deb, because you were cutting in and out there, so I wonder if maybe it wasn't, there's some, I don't know, something else is going on, not just my low talking. Just so you know.
Ever since you moved the microphone, it's been a lot better.
Okay, all right, okay. Who knows, right? It's more like this color, or this color. Yeah, so, but we'll try to email it to you. But anyway, that's what we're planning. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you, Dee. That's actually an attractive logo. So next on our agenda is Rails board member reports. And for our new board members, this is an opportunity for you to share anything that may be going on at your library that you'd like to share with the board and for those listening at home. So does anybody have anything they would like to share?
Hello. Our library is closing on Monday for a month of renovations.
Oh.
Much like some of the other organizations over the years, we've accumulated a ton of money, and we had to spend it, or use it or lose it kind of thing. So, so this is the board chose to renovate the library. It hadn't been renovated in almost 40 years.
Oh my goodness, we know about that.
Imagine the elevator. We couldn't get parts for the elevator. So we're completely tearing out the elevator. It was a former bank building. One of our meeting rooms was in there, so they're tearing out the vault and putting in a new meeting place space. And I'm really looking forward to the re-energizing of that space in there. The children's area is being completely renovated, shelving redone, all that kind of stuff, new carpet. So, so our community is very excited about that. So I'm sure you're all getting an invite to the grand opening that we'll be having in late September.
Which library, I'm sorry?
Fox River Grove.
Fox.
That's fast.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quick.
Yeah, we want it back open by Labor Day.
School.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's great.
Awesome. Cool. Scott, you had something?
Yeah, so at White Oak Library District over the last 5, almost 6 years, we have been increasing our attempts to bring in authors, whether they're local authors or larger named authors, to do events. And last year that culminated in a White Oak Author Fest, like a local-ish author festival that had, I think, 35 authors and about 450 people show up. This year it is on Saturday, October 13th, and we're thrilled that we have Sarah Paretsky is our keynote author this year. So we're in the big time now. Finally have a big name author, and coincidentally, she agreed to do our event, and that's on a Saturday. The following Tuesday, her new novel hits.
Oh.
So she's going to have copies of it with her at the thing. So that's another little draw. To pay for that, August 18th, we are having a murder mystery event at one of our branches as a fundraiser event. It's the first time we've ever done this, but you know, getting the Illinois law changed to allow alcohol in libraries is helping. So it's going to be an evening, like a Saturday night event from 7 to 10 p.m. and we've got the local police department and the fire department involved. It's a murder mystery. We're turning the library into a casino. So it's like a Casino Royale themed kind of event, and yes, the one point in time, one of the staff members who's posing as a patron attending the event is going to like take a dive like they've been poisoned, and the fire department's going to come and rush them out, and then later on, then the police department's going to show up and arrest the perpetrator when they've been revealed at the end of the murder mystery. So,
Where's your library, Scott?
Both of these events I just described are at the Crest Hill Library. So. And I have tickets with me if you all have your tickets. Amazingly, I have those tickets with me. That's it.
Awesome. Any other reports anyone would like to share? Yes, ma'am.
So you may have seen that the Board of Trustees of the University of Illinois and the Board of Trustees of the John Marshall Law School voted for the University of Illinois at Chicago to acquire the John Marshall Law School. So that is going to happen, and now the libraries are working together of those two institutions to see how that is going to work out for the libraries. I'm sure it will be harder for John Marshall Law School to become a state entity. They'll have to learn to deal with all the state people all the time. And I also used to work at John Marshall Law School, so that will be thrilling for me to try and make these two things come together. So there's a lot of interesting stuff. So probably the merger will probably be official, or acquisition will be official probably like July 1st, 2019.
Cool. Any other news anyone would like to share?
I have something. It's Dee Runnels from Davenport.
Hey.
We
Hey, Dee.
have a card holder at our library, or two card holders, who were actually at the ALA. Mother Liz LaRoe, that's Lareau, and her daughter Lucy LaRoe have written a graphic novel called It's Not Rocket Science, and it's about the geeky Fab Five. It takes place in Normal, Illinois at Earhart, for Amelia Earhart Elementary School, and it's about girl power. And it's being released on July 31st. They were on television down in New Orleans, and they were at the ALA. And it's pretty exciting for Moline.
Yeah.
I'm waiting.
Great.
I've had mine copy on order from Amazon for 2 or 3 months, and it's coming out next week. And I think it'd be a good addition to any public library.
Thank you, Dee. One thing I can say, our library, the Fountaindale Public Library District, will be celebrating its 3rd graduating class from Career Online High School. So we're really excited about that.
And you're the first in the state to do it.
We were first in the state to do it. It's been a wonderful program. We're really hoping Veranda's coming because our keynote speaker is her favorite. Is her favorite legislator, who's been very supportive.
Super passionate about education.
Yes, he is.
Wonderful. He's like Elvis. I love
Who was it?
Senator Pat McGuire.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. Any other reports to share? Well, if not, we move on to agenda building for the next Rails board meeting. And this is an opportunity if there's something that you would like to have discussed or considered at the next board meeting, this would be the perfect opportunity to suggest that.
I would say that we will be talking about committees and probably about the buddy system. And I promised that I would talk to you about the strategic plan as well. I don't know if there's more. We'll be in East Peoria.
Yes. Any other suggestions for next month's agenda?
I would say that Jay's suggestion about gift policies might be something that we should start discussing or put on a committee at least.
Yeah, we can do that. That's something for the policy committee, which apparently I'm in the chair of. So, yeah. How'd that work? All right, is there anything else for next month's agenda? Hearing none, I will declare this meeting adjourned at 2:55 p.m. Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.